Hey everyone, welcome to Houdini Hangout. We're back after a couple weeks of me traveling and lots of miles in the air. And it's been a busy last couple of weeks for me. I actually planned on maybe doing a little bit last week, but I was actually then went out of town for my wife's birthday, so that was a little bit unexpected. We kind of planned that right before I left because I was like, we should do something. So anyways, we went away for a couple days. So yeah, it was a lot. It was a very busy last couple of weeks. And so but it's nice to be back. Good to be here with everybody. And I figured what better way to kind of ease our way back into things than doing a little live Q&A type session. I feel like these have been pretty well received in the past. I think they're pretty fun, as at least we can kind of go back and forth a little bit more quickly. So that's cool. And so that's kind of the idea for tonight. So think of your questions, think of things that you'd like to chat about. And that's obviously what, drop them in the chat. There are no dumb questions in Houdini. So please feel free to ask any questions, and I'll do my best to come up with a reasonable answer to whatever. I can't say that I would have, can't say that I'll have the answers to everything. I don't. I can say that I don't. And, but otherwise, we can maybe try to work through things, talk through things, see what we can kind of explore that you're interested in and that maybe you've been struggling with or trying to feel like, feel out or something like that, some idea or concept. So those are, that's kind of what we're doing for this evening. So like I said, drop your questions and comments and thoughts in the chat. And that would be... that's a great first question. So a couple of good questions from the start there. Good evening, Epoxia. Welcome. We've got a couple good questions from Orient Access and Epoxia there. So I will get to those shortly. Those are great questions and good stuff to start us off, kick us off with. The one thing I did want to mention real quick before we go. Oh, hey, Simon, welcome. Hey, everybody, just ask Simon your questions. Just kidding. Welcome, Simon. Nice to see you in the chat. That's very kind of you to give a little bit of your time. Yeah, you were really late at work. Holy cow, man. It's midnight over there. Jeez. Get some sleep. Hope everything's going well over in the UK there. So real quick before we oh no, USD struggles. Well, hey, you know where to find me, so I'm always happy to try to answer some USD questions. Oh yeah, Simon, you were off. I haven't had a chance to watch your video yet. I had to watch back all of the FMX ones first, which there's a segue for us real quick. I was just recently looking at all of the FMX talks because we did a little internal chat about them or whatever. Oh, they're not out yet. Oh, okay, gotcha. So there was a ton of great talks at FMX. So take a look at huge number of talks here. So just going to throw these out there, and they were really, really great. Oh, I see. Yours isn't out yet. Gotcha. A couple that I want to highlight that I really enjoyed was this Infected in Cordyceps. This was super cool. It was by Magnus Pedersen from Storm Studios. Lot of great, let's see, how do I want to explain it? Like deformation type, work in here, a lot of really cool like SOPs level tricks and stuff that aren't specifically simulation to do some of these really crazy effects, like the doing all of this stuff with like blend shapes and some really interesting stuff on this like incision into this infected. So really, really good stuff. Yeah, amazing. It was really, really cool. So check that one out. That's a great one. And let's see, another one that I really enjoyed was, well, I think some of these with the commercial ads, like the Generalist Duo, the commercial ads, some of that stuff was really interesting. I was bummed that the USD Fallout series wasn't able to be recorded, but oh, I thought this one had some really cool one. The decay maps that he was talking about. Some really neat stuff in there. Some neat tricks from Corbin. So take a look at those. And as Simon mentioned, if we go back to the main site here, also there's the off chats as well. A whole day of those. A lot of great stuff, I'm sure, here. This is obviously very appropriate because it's more motion graphics kind of related stuff. So really, really nice things. And so, yeah, take a look at that. Obviously, Simon there did a chat, so that's pretty cool. We'll have to take a look at that one. But lots of good stuff from a lot of names that you might recognize, some that you might not. Oh, cool. Yours is going to be released later. What's Forward? I don't think I know Forward. That's cool, though. Oh, I see. There's some of these that have presentation recordings to come. Cool. But yeah, so a lot of great stuff. XK Studio. They never do anything interesting. So lots of cool stuff here. So definitely take a look at them. Actually, I think somebody mentioned Bastion in one of the FMX talks as well. So that was kind of cool. Anyways, lots of great learning materials out there. So we'll just kind of make that quick announcement there. So cool. So let's go back to those questions that that Orient and Epoxia had asked. First, I'm gonna talk about the more theoretical one. Do I think that Karma will rip shit and Noctane? I'm guessing you're saying will take over Redshift and Octane. I'm guessing that was your your talk there. But I don't think that it's going to be taking over or like taking away from those things. Obviously, different renderers have things that they're really good at. Like I think there's a lot of maturity in Redshift at this point, right? Like there's a lot of stuff that's kind of been put out there. So Redshift has this really nice mature code base, and it's fast, and like it's pretty well integrated in Houdini, so it's really nice. And Octane, I haven't ever really used Octane. I have used Redshift more than I've used Octane. I've kind of maybe dabbled with it a little bit, but I know Octane is like crazy fast. It feels like, at least every time I've used it, it's like insanely fast and does certain things like really, really quick. So I think those things have their places in the landscape. I think what we're trying to do with Karma is just more create something that's going to be nicely integrated in Houdini and will be obviously something that you get at least a license for free when you get Houdini. I know that we have recently announced that extra licenses, like beyond, I think like 5 for a node locked commercial license and 2 for an indie license. You'll have to pay for those beyond that, just to obviously continue with updates and, all that type of stuff. Like kind of at the beginning, obviously we were trying to just get things up and rolling, but now that it's a bit more of a actual production based render, I think we're seeing that has a lot of kind of upkeep to it, I guess you could say. So anyway, so they decided that made the most sense to do a small fee. I think it's like $200 a year for extra licenses or whatever. So there will be some cost for extra licenses, but that's kind of how rendering works in general. So don't shoot the messenger, but that is something that happened not too long ago. But it's not, you'll get a few licenses regardless. So anyways, that's my thoughts about Karma. I think you're going to keep seeing more and more features come out with that. Our developers are super involved in both Material X and USD conversations. And so, the rendering team is obviously kind of really central to a lot of those questions and helping to drive those two technologies in a lot of ways. So, so we're really invested in those, and Karma's a straight up USD, renderer. So there is no translation for your scene when you hit render. It's just basically starting everything up. Simon saying adaptive sampling and XPU would be nice. Yeah. I don't know the roadmap for all of that stuff. I know there's definitely lots of changes coming in the next version and things like that. And obviously if I did know any of that, I couldn't say it but I truly don't know all of the details that are coming out, because a lot of the stuff that's happening with CPU and XPU are going to be just kind of these continual pushing the needle forward. So there's lots of I've seen the release notes for 20.5, obviously, but lots of things, lots of little nice feature updates is kind of, I think, what they're planning to continually be bringing forward, right? So lots of things, so I know that's pretty exciting. And there was some cool, just on that note, everybody's always trying to get little nuggets out of me for 20.5, but actually there was a little bit of stuff dropped in the Tumblehead Studios, where they were talking about at FMX, where they were talking about Apex. And so there was some cool stuff there. He mentioned a few things that are new, like Apex script will be coming. So that's kind of interesting. So take a look at that video if you want some little sneak peeks of things that are coming in 20.5. But yeah, I don't get to, that's always, there's always these higher level conversations, like for presentations like that, where they're like, okay, we're going to release this little bit of nugget or thing, whatever. And like last year was the feather system, and this year it's that. So anyways, but yeah, so that's my thoughts on Karma. I think I really enjoy using it, to be honest. Before I even worked at SideFX, I was thinking of getting a Redshift license and just saw where XPU and CPU were going. And I was like, I think I can just probably live with this. I don't do that much rendering personally. So I was like, I think this will suit my needs pretty well. And I've been really happy with anything I've tried to do in it. So I'm not a rendering specialist. I say that very often here. I know maybe painfully little about how to make a good render. I don't have quite the artistic eye that I should have, but anyways. So so then the next question that we'll move on to is by Apoxia. You're saying he's having trouble understanding when to use the SOP level vellum versus using a DOP network. I mean, that's a little bit of a tricky distinction, right? I think really for me, when I want to I don't use the DOP network tools very often anymore. Now, granted, I'm not doing a ton of production stuff. I'm doing more training and teaching and learning materials and things like that. So take this all with a grain of salt. But I find that most of the time I can do anything I want in the SOP level tools, and those extra little guardrails that are kind of in place, usually like just with all the HDAs wrapped up and all that stuff, usually seems to be a help more than a hindrance. If I really need to get in and do something super specific and super kind of like really push the tools past where the developers to push past what the developers have thought, is when I go into the DOP network and into a full maybe a full DOP network. Now I guess the last question there, Epoxy, I just saw was you had to make some glue constraints to update and every frame, and it had to be inside the SOP. You don't really get why. That is a really good question, and I'm not going to try to answer that specifically here. What I'm going to do is pull up, let me see if I can find Toadstorm's blog, because that has the amazing article, SOPs are not DOPs are not SOPs. I'll put the link in here. Hopefully you can get that link. So take a look at that link. That is going to be, that's obviously by Toadstorm, who is now kind of taken the lead of the MOPS tools, and Henry. So take a look at that. He really talks about a lot of things about why we do some things in SOPs and why we do other things in DOPs. And I think the really short like Cliff Notes version, you're very welcome. The Cliff Note versions is that basically SOPs are time independent and DOPs are time dependent, right? So when you make that bridge between the two, like when you move from SOPs to DOPs, what you're doing there is you're basically taking that first frame of your SOP information, passing that into the DOP network, right? And so it doesn't pass that data through every frame unless you do something to specifically tell it to do that, right? So what you're saying in your case there, in order to update glue constraints frame by frame, you have to go inside and actually manipulate them within the DOP network, because within a DOP network, it's always going to be looking at the previous frame for what to do next, right? So it's time dependent. It's looking at frame 1. Okay, what happened on frame 1? I'm going to do something. That's going to be frame 2. Then on frame 3, it's going to look back, see what happened there, and keep doing that same thing over and over and kind of moving through it, right? So when you're dealing with that, you're not, unless you're specifically pulling data in every frame, like for maybe a collider or something like that, but for simulation data, you're not pulling in that every time step, right? It's from SOPs. So that's really the reason why sometimes you need to go into DOPS and actually do things specifically in there. Make maybe a SOP solver within there. Make some sort of, pop wrangle or something like that, all sorts of different things like that. When you're working in there, that is then giving you access to all of the dynamics data on a frame by frame basis and able to manipulate that as time goes on. Because you can't, like if you make your constraints in that situation, it pulls those constraints in at the beginning and operates on them throughout the entire time, the entire time span that you're simulating. So because of that, you're getting, it only pulls in that data right at whatever the start frame of your simulation is, right? In your DOP network. And then that's it. It's not going to be looking back to that every frame, because it needs to do stuff with those constraints, and bringing that data back in would not allow it to actually do anything simulation wise, like time dependent. So that, when you say time independent, basically in SOPs, as you scrub through, it doesn't really matter. It's going to always check, right? Doesn't matter what happened on the frame before. So it just checks. People are asking Simon questions. Sorry, Simon. Some people from Twitch. Let's see. Simon's ice growth. Oh yeah. Well, I do. Yeah, from an abstract side effect. Yeah. So I mean, I guess what I would have to say is if Simon's talked about it, I think he's probably tried to explain it as best he can. Obviously, these things can be really complicated and hard to explain in an hour, when you're looking at, maybe a month's time condensed into an hour-long presentation. So the question there is, can you mix? He's asking Simon, but I'll try to answer the question the best I can. Can I mix fluid in Houdini and render with redshift, like tea and water for brighter tea? Can't do two colors in one DOP net or particle fluid surface. So what I would do is use some other attribute to represent both of those, right? And figure out a way to do some sort of mixing in your simulation, right? With a fluid or something like that. I'm guessing you're thinking a flip fluid. There's ways I would look at doing, like ways that people have done that with different, dent sources and things like that. You'd probably need to do something that would diffuse. Right, exactly. Attributes on the points and then run a SOP solver afterwards. Exactly. So, you'd have to probably diffuse those colors together or those attributes together that would hold each of those, and then have that, probably final attribute drive some sort of a color ramp or something of that nature. So that, at least that's how I would do it. I mean, obviously there's always a million ways to do things in Houdini. And that's just kind of my thought process on that. But yeah, it certainly is a, something that you would use. This is kind of to the last question that Epoxia asked, where, in this case, you'd need to be manipulating that data. Hey, Zach, welcome to the stream. Nice to have you. So you'd need to have that, you need to do that data manipulation within the DOP network, right? Because you need to control that as it goes. If you do it afterwards, you can really only have like two separate fluids. You wouldn't be able to have a fluid that mixes together, right? Because really with that mixing, you're talking about those attributes kind of diffusing through there. So I would look at some of some of that type of math. There might even be a microsolver or something for that would do the diffusion for you. But certainly some sort of a SOP solver where you're blending an attribute, to the surrounding attributes and things like that. Yeah, anyways, yeah, that would be, I think, what you would do, and you'd maybe give those two attributes, let them kind of blend and do things like that. And yeah, you'd be able to get, instead of worrying about having two colors that are like doing color mixing, which you could do as well. I guess you could have two colors and have them blend together and do stuff like that. But that might muddy things up a bit more, especially if you want to have two really distinct, parts of that. You may be doing those, that attribute as a blend of some type, might allow for you to do something like that. So anyways, there's probably several different ways you could go about doing that, but certainly that would be done in a some sort of SOP solver inside of a DOP network. So yeah, oh, that's a great suggestion, Simon. Yeah, so Simon's just saying using velocity to limit the diffusion in the direction of the flow. So as that fluid is flowing forward, using the speed of that velocity to maybe update how those colors are diffusing, or how that attribute is diffusing, that maybe mixing attribute. Maybe your mix attribute is like a 0 to 1, and 0 is your T, and 1 is your water or something like that. And as that use that velocity force to influence how and where that diffusion is happening. So yeah, that's certainly an interesting thing. I really liked in that what was it, in the Last of Us presentation, they were doing some, or no, it wasn't in the Last of Us presentation, sorry, it was in, I think it was in this one. Let me see. Nope, I'm in the wrong thing. Sorry, give me a second. So in this one by the Marmalade, there was some really cool stuff in this one as well. I actually really enjoyed this as well. So one really cool thing was this like Toblerone piece that they were doing. There's certainly ways that I could see this being done differently, but I really liked this, where they were taking their UVs and like smearing them with these like velocity fields and stuff like that in order to get so they're moving these, getting velocities from them. And then I think there's the velocity fields, and then they use those to smear their UVs, like basically like, it looks really cool. It's really fun looking, but they'll show the UVs in a second here. They got a really cool look. Come on. Where is it? There it is. So you get these really fun, like smeared UVs going there. And that gives it this really nice kind of smooth look. And that on the right is actually the render, which looks so good. It's so fun to see that. So so that was a really cool talk. And it just reminded me of that when you're talking about using the velocities to get meaningful, attributes or meaningful like distortions maybe on things, or having something like be more prompted how it should go, instead of just kind of randomly doing something, giving it some influence based on like velocity or things like that. So I really enjoyed that as well. So anyways, cool. So yeah, the Gone in 60 frames was a good one. So yes, I'm just looking here to see if there was any other chats there. Lots of people saying hello and welcome to the stream. Yeah, Vic, glad to have you. Lots of interesting stuff there to kind of think through. So yeah, I'm definitely after watching a lot of those streams and things like that, or those presentations, and I'm sure after watching the ones from off. I'll certainly be looking at some of those and just thinking about some techniques to maybe explain from that, maybe a little bit more in depth. So certainly will be on my radar. And for sure, if anybody has any suggestions or anything like that they'd like for us to tackle, we can certainly certainly join the Discord server. So there's at Houdini Hangout, you can get a link to our Discord server. and join up there. There's topic suggestions, and I'll be kind of combing through those in the coming, next week probably for some more topics and things like that to stream about. So I'm always kind of looking at those for ideas and things like that. So feel free to put some stuff in there and join the Discord, and lots of people chatting and talking in there. Lots of interesting conversations recently. So it's been pretty active. So it's been really exciting to see people chatting with each other and helping each other. So, hey, welcome Factor, and Zolt. Hello, I'm working on a stormy ocean, but I don't know how to make spray and the foam sim. Can you help me, please? So, what I would say is, if you want to see how spray and foam works, what I would do is take a look at the, I'll just switch over here. And if we drop down a geo node and go inside here, if we do a flip configure beach tank, I know this might seem a little weird, but if we do this and drop this down, this comes with this actually comes with the whitewater SOPs tools down here at the bottom, and this is just the particle. No, that's the surfacing. So this is our surfacing node here. So we'll just leave that off to the side. But here you can see we have our whitewater source and our whitewater solver. So if we go through and do a few frames here, this isn't, it's flip. It's not exactly the fastest thing in the universe, but let's give it a few frames here, and we can go down and see what's happening maybe with this whitewater source here. So, hey, Crossfader, welcome. So down here, we will have our whitewater solver and our whitewater source. And so, yep, there's not much happening there yet, but you'll see that we're going to start to source in particles and things like that. And so the way that this works is usually that you'll be looking to emit from certain areas on your fluid simulation, right? So you can see we're starting to get more and more things here. And really, these are going to be driven by kind of the properties of the output of your flip solver. So with our whitewater solver here, this is really the most important part. You can see we're starting to get some volumes there, right? So we're starting to get some sourcing. And so what we do here is we source from different things like curvature, acceleration, vorticity. You can also use pressure and splash. You can use all sorts of different, like surface deformations and things like that to get emission from. And, you can obviously use some extra sources and things like that. But really the idea here is kind of taking the output from our fluid sim, looking at that, kind of analyzing it, seeing where certain things are happening, like curvature, which is just how much basically the surface is kind of curving from that fluid sim, or the acceleration or vorticity, how fast it's churning or moving and things like that. So really to add the whitewater to it isn't a huge process. Now this is obviously a packaged kind of preset, right? But all you need to do is basically copy here down, right? Obviously your fluid surface will probably exist already, but so I guess from here and here down. And there's really only a few nodes in the SOP level workflow that you can wire this into. You've got your sim, your container, and your collisions. Now in the DOP level, there's a little bit more kind of back and forth that you have to do, which makes it feel a little bit more difficult. So I would recommend doing it this way. I think you'll be able to get some nice results out of these SOP level tools, and you can I'm pretty sure you can use them. You could set up probably a container yourself, and the collisions. So I think even if you were doing this from a DOP network and importing it back into the SOP level, you could get out these same geometry streams, right? Like this is just going to be your compressed fluid sim, right? So here's the compressed fluid sim. And then this is the container, which is just being set up by this. So you could run a whitewater simulation without the rest of it. You would just have to make sure you're setting up your container and your collisions properly as well, like in this thing. So you'd put in a flip collide and things like that. But even if you did this in a DOP network, you could still bring it back over here and run it this way, because this is super straightforward. You literally need like 2 nodes to make it work. So and then you can post process it as well, right? You can get the particle scales and all sorts of different things here. So you can output particles or fog or mesh them however you want to render it. But so that is sort of what I would recommend for whitewater, how you would maybe go about it. If you have more specific questions, feel free to join the Discord, because I think the more specific the questions get, the better that is a place for us to be able, for me or other people to help you out. So, think about posting your question there. Nobody's, especially if you feel like you're a mega beginner, feel free to use the beginners channel. There's no shame in any questions there. And if anybody gives you shame, they're out. So if anybody gives you crap about putting some stupid question in there that they think is not smart enough, they'll have to answer to me. So anyways, please feel free to ask some more specific. Awesome. Great. Well, we'll be glad to have you. This is a, what am I trying to do here? Whitewater example. Just a simple whitewater example. Yeah, that's great. I hopefully that will help you, and any questions that you run into, we should be able to knock them out there pretty quickly. So Epoxia is asking a question again. Let's see what your question is here, Epoxia. I know you don't render too much, but one thing I miss from Redshift while in Karma is Maxon noises. How is the situation with noises in Karma? There are a few nodes, but I find it a bit confusing. Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, certainly, like I said, there's kind of that that wealth of kind of history, right, with Redshift and its maturity at this point. I think there's this is sort of a common theme that I hear from a lot of the developers and a lot of the conversations. Where's the link to the Discord? You can find it on houdinihangout.com, and it should be down a little bit. There's a Discord link. When you're working, let me just put down a LOP network here, and we can just chat about this a little bit. So you probably know this already, but I'm just going to do a material library, and we'll go inside here and do a Karma material builder. And when we're in here, right, this is a kind of focused Karma specific environment. That's why we do this. It actually, up here, there's a little thing that masks out things that should be in here. Oh no, Epoxy, you don't ask too many questions, and that's the whole point. That's the whole point of this stream today, is to ask questions. So that is great. So when we're in here, we can see that there's these nodes, right? These Material X nodes. These are great. These are directly from Material X. So if we go in here and go to Material X, these are all of the not all of the standard, but this is where those standard nodes live. But when we come up here and look to something like, let's see here, something like this, the Karma curvature. This is something that we've developed that is a Material X shader, but does not exist. You can see it's got the Material X icon there, but also it's got the Houdini icon. And these don't exist in standard Material X, right? These are not standard Material X nodes. And so we are working with the Material X team to integrate things that we feel like are missing from the Material X standard that will make it better for everyone. Exactly. This definitely would not translate into a any other software that knows Material X would not know what to do with that node. That node does not exist in their code base for Material X. So whenever you see that, that's going to be one that doesn't convert. Similarly, things like these light filters and things like that, these are just specific to Karma. So like these wouldn't translate either. And that's going to be true of every renderer, because there's no way that every renderer is going to agree on X, Y, or Z, right? Like, if you're going to do RenderMan, you're going to have certain types of shaders and certain things like that they want to do. And maybe if you want to edit a light, it's going to be done a certain way. And if you do this with a camera lens, it's going to be done a certain way. But I think a lot of render engines have started to really coalesce around this idea of how the standard surface model, right? I believe it was Autodesk and the Arnold team that released that originally, and everybody's kind of just said, yeah, this is a great way to explain this. It's really physically based. It kind of has now unified, I think, a lot of render engines as far as how they go about talking about things. Now, there are some maybe little add-ons here and there, but my hope is someday that you'd be able to put down Material X nodes just in a material library and just switch renderers. Material Builder's full of Arnold nodes since he's been testing it. That's funny. Yeah. Yeah, it is annoying to have different shaders and different things like that. I think the nice thing is that I know Arnold does support Material X shaders. So, and I've imported shaders from other software using Material X. So I would think that if you saved out your shaders in Houdini as Material X and loaded them in for Arnold to load in, that might help as well. That might be a way to do that. I haven't really looked into that too much because I haven't been using other render engines recently. But it certainly could be something that is possible. Somewhat support it. Hey, that's not me. I just make the tutorials. I'd like to support everything, but I don't get a choice to what we can support or not support. Yeah. So I think in this line, this is a long way of me saying, I think what you'll see from us is trying to make some of these types of noise nodes, would be my guess. This is just me kind of spitballing. That would be how I would see us attack some of that stuff, where this type of a node would be introduced that might have more noise options. So that's maybe one thing. Yeah, so that would be my thought. And hopefully that will be something that will continue on. And I think, I think that'll be probably how these things are done, where maybe eventually that'll be in standard Material X and we'll be able to see that, that more and more. But, okay. A couple more questions. It looks like, couple more questions here. Sorry, just trying to read back through all this stuff here. So how would it be to transfer an attribute to a deforming geometry with a solver, like an object trespassing a zone, getting an attribute to do another simulation on top of it with that attribute? That's interesting, Limon. I'm trying to think of exactly the specific case there. I think if you would go back and take a look at some of the, I'm trying to think of what specific stream it would have been, but the MOPS tool set is really good at doing stuff like that, right? So, if you're looking into doing stuff like that, I would really highly recommend looking into maybe taking a look at the MOPS Plus tool set, because without having to get too deep into writing your own custom solvers for something like that, where you have attributes that are happening when it comes within a certain range, the MOPS Plus tool set sort of does that, right? So like, so let me just see if I could show that real quick. So if we did, I'm just trying to think of what we could do here. I'm just going to do something super dumb. Just do a sphere, copy to points. You can use an instance, or I'm just doing this because it's probably quicker for me to do. Do a grid maybe. Just a bunch of these like this. We'll pack and instance them because they need to be instances to be liked by these MOPS tool sets, right? So if we did like a MOPS, what is it, like a shape fall off here, right? So we'll put that in, preview the fall off here, right? And so now we've got this shaped fall off here, right? That we can control with this little field widget and change the scale. Let's see here. So I could change the scale like this, right? Do all sorts of different stuff with it, right? But then if we wanted to maybe bring this into something like, I'm just trying to think how we could do this. Solver. So I think if we did this, I'm again doing a live demo is dumb, but let's give this a shot. I'm going to give this a ground plane, bring it down a little like so. And I think that should simulate just fine. What did I do here? I did something dumb. What did I do? Let's do let's do an RBD configure there, like so. Reset that. Not sure why that's going so slow. Hello? Reset. Thank you. There we go. Okay. I'm probably doing something really stupid. Oh, I've got the other simulation in the background. That's why. I'm like, why is that going so slow? That's dumb. Dun, dun, dun. Sorry. Okay. So now if we went inside of here and had like a we could do a shape fall off in here as well. And if we do the preview here, yep, there we go. So now in here, we could do the exact same thing where we could actually have these as they're moving through their simulation be updated in this view and actually get, get that simulation with those, with that attribute output. So anyways, that's what you could do there. And I probably did something really stupid here that I'm not thinking of. And I don't know why packing that and instancing that was, why it's going so slow, but that's okay. Anyways, I probably just did something really stupid. But anyways, that is what I would look into if you're looking to do some of that stuff. It's way easier to have attributes that adjust, in other simulations and things like that. So, cool. The next one was Canamore. Any tips on how to make Karma less crashy? Whenever I work on shading live, it's super unstable. It's interesting. I mean, there's a few things I could think of. It could be maybe a driver issue. That's always possible. Not super likely. I haven't heard a ton of things about like certain drivers that have been an issue recently. Yeah, no problem, Limon. Yeah, MOPS is great. It is the MOPS Plus is a paid product, but especially if you're used to doing like motion graphics type stuff, can be really, really helpful. Yeah, I think, so Canamore, I think you'll find there's that a lot of times stability of things like that are very computer oriented, machine oriented usually. I find it to be really stable, but that doesn't mean that the next person won't. So I would look at drivers, making sure those are up to date. I would take a look at maybe how it is you're doing things specifically in there. Sometimes the order of operations can really mess with things. Like, for example, if you're, because Karma is a USD render engine, if your USD is doing something that is really kind of not the what's the word I'm trying to think of here? Not kind of the most kosher way of doing something, not the best way of doing something. You could run into some really weird things. Like if your scene graph is rebuilding itself every single frame or often, or something is causing the scene to update way more frequently, that could cause some instability issues. So if you have a scene that you are wanting to take a look at like that, I think, again, not to kind of just say the same thing over and over, but I would definitely look at the posting something in the Discord of your setup if you can, to kind of show what exactly it is you're doing. I mean, if it's a simple scene and it's crashing a lot, that would make me think it's a hardware issue. But if you're running into something that's a more complicated scene, it could be something in your USD that's causing things to be updating when they shouldn't be, which is, I mean, again, USD can be a really complicated thing, and it was made for huge studios. However, a lot of times you shouldn't have to think about it too much in Solaris. So it kind of depends on what it is you're doing and how far you're pushing things. But yeah, anyways, I would really recommend maybe posting an example. If you can post an example or a screenshot of something, that might be able to help people track down issues with you or whatever. So, yeah. Okay. Looks like Lucas has something here. Crossfader. I was wondering if you could attempt this sticky animation from Bake Creative. Not sure if the link will post here. Yeah, it does. Oh, it did. It did post. I've got it. What is this? The baked. Oh, yes. This is one of the. I think this was one of the places that. Oh gosh, yeah. This one. This was one of the presentations from the FMX presentations that I was watching recently. These were really cool. I think this was the same. No, this was a different studio. This wasn't the same one as the chocolate. But yeah, this was really a really cool talk. If you're looking for more of that, like more on that, take a look at, let's see which one that is. Baked Creative right there. There it is. How to nail commercial product ads. So take a look at that. That's got some cool stuff, but that certainly would be an interesting one. Yeah, that could be fun to play around with. I'd have to think of what part of that I'd want to tackle, because those have quite a few things in them. So not that I wouldn't maybe be able to do them, but just, obviously there's some, for these things, I like to try to keep them kind of condensed. So hard to think about how to do those. But anyways, yeah, that's a great suggestion. Glad to see that. Marco posted a question that says, is there a way to animate the position and rotation of the guides of some feathers? In my case, I have feathers applied to wings that need to open. So if I'm understanding correctly, which I very well might not be, it looks like you're asking about like the orientation of them as some animation happens. Is that what I'm understanding? I'm guessing, okay, so the wing is probably like folded up in some way, and you want to unfold the wing and have there be a change in the in like the orientation of the wings, and maybe the barbs as well. Oh, the guides, just the guides. Okay. The orientation. Okay. Yeah. So what I would probably look at for that, because I'm sure you're able to obviously get the guides to I'm guessing all of the kind of standard grooming stuff of like getting the guides to stick to the animated geometry as they deform and all that stuff is working. What you should be able to do though is you could use something like write a little Vex code to be able to do some orientation updates on those feather attributes, because let me just do this here. I'm going to drop a geo node down. Call this feathers. We'll just call this feathers. So if I do a feather template here, just a simple feather. Here we go. That should, yep. Oh, just as a side note, I got asked this question recently. If you aren't seeing your these barbs in the viewport, go up to the miscellaneous and click on shade, open curves, and viewport. That happened because I dropped down a feather template, and it actually, part of the preset is for it to do that. But anyways, let's take a look at these here. So what I would do is take a look at tweaking these attributes here, right? The barb orient attributes, all of that stuff. So those attributes, you would need to like kind of update them in like kind of all together, right? So like as you're rotating these feathers, I believe you would need to update your barb's positions and things like that, because I think, I could be wrong, but I think that if I took this, yeah, okay. So let me just take these, and I actually don't know what happens if I do a transform here. Will that affect it or not? How will that affect it? Okay, no, the barbs seem like they're working fine, and the positions are actually changing. You can see the barb orient is updating, and I guess then these barb positions must be relative. So that's good. That's sort of good to know. I was thinking you might have to update those. But what you would probably need to do is update this barb orient attribute there. You can see it's changing as I'm doing this. So I would say that you probably do a little bit of Vex code there to kind of give yourself a way to adjust those as they open up. Maybe you could even do some sort of like a blend between the two positions, right? Like blend, set a groom, or like set an kind of a state where it is in the right orientation when it's all bunched together, and then as it like straightens out, maybe then you blend it between those two. That could be an option. You could also, again, write Vex code, because you can tweak all of these things in there. You can even tweak the barb positions and things like that in Vex, because those are just arrays. These are 12 float arrays of attributes, because there's 4 barbs on each side. But anyways, that would be my thought, Marco. I haven't gone into that like fine level of detail of like tweaking things. There might be some good things you could maybe pick up from like even the Eagle example file, that you might want to take a look at. There could be some really interesting, I mean, there's so many different layers of stuff going on in that Eagle groom that we released in the content library. And there could be some really interesting things in there to look at to kind of get an idea of how you could tweak those barbs and do things like that. So that's about, I think, what I'd be able to help you with, just kind of off the top of my head. But if you have more specific examples, you can always reach out to me with those. But that I think would be maybe a couple ways to think about tweaking those, because they're really, again, they're just guide hairs. So however you want to adjust those, you should be able to do pretty much what you need to with that. But oh, no problem. Hello, welcome. But I think the one thing that might get messed up is the orientation a little bit. So making sure that barb orient is being adjusted properly would be a big part of that as well. And I think there's even feather utility, I think, has a way to, yes, to align the orient to the curve tangent. So if you do need to update dynamically, if you do need to update the barb orient attribute from like a new rest position for your character or whatever, you could always throw that on there. If for some reason you did something with Vax or did something like, really specific, and you could use that to update those barb orients as well. So maybe, try some of those things, see what might work there. And certainly if you're running into a really specific issue, there's lots of folks on the Discord that might be happy to get into some more details there with you. But cool. Yeah, it's a great question. Sorry, making noises with my mouth. My apologies. What role will Amazon AWS play in Houdini? How can it benefit the average user? Carlos was asking that. I haven't looked into that, to be honest, ever. I don't know a lot about that. I think I'm going to just give you an opinion that's not backed up in anything super empirical, data based. I think for the average user, meaning someone that, for someone that doesn't have access to someone that is more systems administrative or like IT based, I don't think that using Amazon for your daily computing needs is a super practical thing for a single user. I'm not super, like, I feel like I'm decently computer savvy. I've built computers plenty. I've done some IT stuff, even just screwing around at my studios that I've worked at. Like, I've done plenty of things in that world, but AWS always feels a little out there to me. It's just so different from how normal computers work that it's like, just feels like so many hoops you have to jump through. Now, that is for me as someone that doesn't have people helping me. I think there's a lot of studios that are looking at things like that, distributed, compute, and compute that only spins up when you need it. I think that is something that studios are looking for. One of the studios at FMX mentioned that. I can't remember which one right now. I can't remember which studio mentioned that they were using cloud-based systems like that. Gosh, I can't remember. Anyways, take a look at those. One of them mentioned that, but I think that you'll see more studios doing that as we're moving to a more distributed world where people are now working more remotely. And we've realized that that's more doable. I think there are still hurdles there, but I tend to think that studios are going to be moving to things like that more often, because updating your hardware every couple years and updating your software and updating all these, like, for studios that are even of a medium size, that's a lot of work. So I could see that being a benefit to them. Yeah, I'm getting into, this is obviously more hardware tech chat, but I think there are benefits to be had there. And certainly you could have render, power that would be available to you as you need it, as opposed to having a server that you manage on site. And I think there's a lot of positives there. It's just a question of, how practical, I think, is it for the everyday user. And that's that one part of that question is where I kind of get hung up, where it's like, when I want to use my computer, I sit down, I type my password in, and I go. Like, that's about as much as I think the normal user wants their effort to be to get their computer going. There's also, again, the issues of like getting charged for storage and getting charged for data transfer and things like that. When it's a person work, when it's a freelancer and you're not paying for your storage, like, you paid to have it, but you don't have to worry about how much data you're transferring in and out of it. So there's some of those considerations that I think get a little weird when you start looking at those things, because there's like little charges for everything. But yeah, I think maybe that's an answer to that question. That's certainly really interesting. I don't think anybody's asked me that ever. Mostly because I don't have a lot of reason to have an opinion on that. But I could certainly see it being something that's more and more done by studios and things like that. Orient Axis had a question. Was wondering if there's a way to add dynamic. I'm guessing what you're saying is like add dynamic lines to a trail or add dynamics to a trail. Is that what you're saying there, Orient Axis? I'm sorry if I'm reading that in a weird way. I was wondering, is there any way to add dynamic to the lines trail? I'm guessing that you mean... I'm guessing that you mean that like you've got a trail, you want to add dynamics to it. I'm not sure what kind of dynamics you're trying to add to it. So I guess that's the question. That would be a question I would ask you back. But certainly you'd be able to add dynamics to trails and things like that. That would be very doable. I think you could certainly, I mean, like particles coming off of trails would be super easy to do. You do that a bunch of different ways, kind of make that however you wanted. I think if you're talking about something like a more like a hair type simulation from a trail, I think an easier way of doing that, or at least maybe an easier way to think about doing that, would be to, you'd have a particle simulation that your trail that you want to have trails emitted from, but instead of making a trail and then trying to make that dynamic, what I would maybe say instead is you'd instance hairs onto those points and then have those move around in your scene. You'd have a pinned point to that initial point, and then from there those points would move around, and the hairs would be dragged around the scene in that way. Like that's an easier way, I think, to think of something like that, like adding dynamics to a trail. If you wanted to do, and then that kind of, I mean, I can't really think of any other dynamic. Well, I guess you could emit fluid from a trail. That's certainly doable. I mean, it's really just about sourcing then and how you want to source that. Whether you want to make geometry as a trail that you would source like a flip fluid from, or even a vellum fluid from. If you wanted to source smoke from a trail, like a particle trail, really most of our sourcing now is very particle point based, right? So if you're sourcing, pyro, you'd have points that are scattered on. You could even scatter them on the trail, give those the density attributes that you need, give those the velocity, temperature, whatever attributes that you need, and then go from there. I think that would, those are all options that you could do, I guess, for doing dynamics with trails. Hopefully that sort of answers your question. I mean, I know I'm kind of talking conceptually. Just trying to think. I think what you would do, let me think. Let's actually try that, since I don't have any other questions here. Let's just give that a shot, because I think I could do that. I think I'm smart. I think I'm smart enough to do that. Maybe not. Maybe I don't know the right way to do it, but let's see here. So if we did a line, it's going to be the simplest thing ever. So we got a line. We're going to set this up as a vellum configure hair, right? And let's add some more points to this, maybe 8. Yeah, so I wouldn't say to do it that way. So here's our vellum hair, right? Let's also do something like this. Let's do a pop network, right? And let's just maybe use a torus. I don't know. We're going to do developer art, really, really high-end developer art here. Let's do just a pop wind. Drop that down. Yeah, need some amplitude there, huh? Oh, that's too much. Actually, I need to turn the time on. That's crazy. Let's not do so many because that's way too many. Let's just do like 50 maybe. See how that goes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, sir. Yes, yes, yes. Thank you. Well, you don't want to just watch me describe something? You don't want to watch me just describe what I'm doing and just imagine it? I'm so good at making a visual of what I'm doing. Okay, so yeah, just did a line. We're going to use some vellum hair, I think, to do this. That'll be fine. And I think we'll just do a pop network like this, right? And there's our like source. Actually, that even still is too much. I'm going to just turn this way down. I'm just going to do a few points here. And just because I'm not totally sure how this is going to work. All right, so let's just do this. We'll do a pop star. We'll do a pop null here. Just say pop sim. Now, okay, I think this will work. So we'll do a vellum solver. And I believe that we need to input, I'm just trying to start it up. Need to input that. That'll hopefully get that going away. Yep. So this is the same thing that we do when we're like emitting fluid in here. And I think this will work. I could be totally off base here. Vellum source. And I think if we do instance on points, yep, that should work. So we're going to grab, let's see here. Let's do this. Sorry, this is a null. We'll call this geo. I mean, this is an insanely simple thing. Cons. And let's do this. Okay, so let's grab these. So let's say the SOP path is going to be, this one. I didn't name it, that's why. And then the constraints are cons. The instance points, I think we're just going to do this. I could be totally wrong. This might not work. So let's see. Let's give it a shot. Oh, that's right. I probably need to pin it, don't I? Let me think here. It's really interesting. Pretty wacky. We're like emitting onto those. That's really weird. Well, you'll have to go back and watch again, landlord or not. Yeah, because this is what it's doing is it's emitting from those, not moving with those. So yeah, that's I feel like there's a way to do this. I just haven't really thought about it too much. This is certainly fun. It's not what you asked for, but I mean, if we put a ground position in there, it'd be pretty fun. We get a bunch of like weird piled up like hair things going on here. You'd get a big pile of them. It's like horrifying. It's like absolutely disgusting. I mean, something's happening. It's not good. It's gross. Yeah, because you'd need to pin the points to the animation. Yeah, I feel like I feel like you would be running into a lot of trouble trying to do it that way. Um just trying to think of like what the logical way of doing that is, cuz like yeah, the tricky part there is that if you're I guess if you had a stable point count, and what you were specifically saying would be almost like just doing a hair simulation, really. Um, and you could do a yeah. There's so many different ways you could do it. I guess you could just attach hairs to the character, and as it moves, you'd keep the pins, the roots pinned to the character, and just move it around that way. And then obviously as its velocity changes and stuff like that, that would work. I think this again goes back to the issue of the time dependency versus non-time dependency, and I feel like I feel like Matt Estella had something that he did on the wiki like this. I would definitely recommend going and taking a look at that, because I'm pretty sure there's a file there somewhere that he did something very similar to that. Like weird growing hair and stuff like that, doing vellum sims like that. I would look at the wiki for that. Now you know how to do weird emission like this with particle networks. But that's certainly not what you're trying to do. It's fun, but it's not right. It's not the question you asked. But yeah, I would take a look at Matt's wiki. Honestly, I think there'd be a lot of nice stuff there to take a look at. Because yeah, what you're probably running into, is those lines have probably changing point counts and all sorts of things like that. And that's going to cause issues. You need to have, in your constraint geometry, you need to have the same number of points as in your main geometry. So those need to be, constant. Excuse me. Sorry. But yeah, those things will cause issues within something like Vellum. There needs to be a stable point count between the geometry and the constraints. So, yeah, I would take a look at Matt's stuff. I think he's got some examples of that. And I could sit here and screw around with this all day, but I was thinking that what I was just thinking of would work, but it's just an emission method. And it makes sense to see it, but, to see it that way, but it isn't specifically what you were asking for. So yeah, I'd have to give that a little more thought as to how that might work. Anyways, hopefully that's at least something helpful. I don't know. That might have been a bunch of nothing. Hey, La Pampadura, welcome. Just for everybody that's joining us still, feel free to drop questions or comments or thoughts in the chat, and we'll kind of continue to go through and have a little chat here today. Just a little bit of a Q&A session. Certainly not any specific one thing that we're working on. So feel free to drop your questions in the chat. No dumb questions in Houdini, and so feel free. Could you make one of the points on those lines sticky so they clump up? Sticky to what? To each other? Um, I mean, if anything, if you wanted them to clump up like into a big pile, and sticky side sticks to the ground. Oh, I see. Like you want it to like blunk, like stick into the ground. Yeah, I could probably do that, but honestly, I don't know. I'd have to think about that a little bit because you'd have to have an orientation attribute that would stick and a bunch of stuff like that. Really, the way you would want to do this is there's some really funny stuff happening there. You'd only want those instanced points to come up once and not stay alive. So like you'd want to do something more like it's going great. Let me click on everything. So maybe something like you do like a quarter of a second there, and then that way it's not just like constantly keeping these things all alive. It's only doing a few at a time, right? It's kind of just they're a little bit more localized or whatever. And yeah, so it's a little more fun. I don't know. It's a little more reasonable. It's not because as those things curved around, every position, every spot where one of those points were, they were constantly emitting from. So they just lived forever. So we just kept adding more and more emission points. This is a little bit more, specific. And obviously you could add, where was that? Here. Could do like this, I think. And you could add the velocity into it, probably. Not that there's a ton of velocity. I think that's doing it. Let me see here. Maybe not. I thought that would do it. That's weird. Is that not outputting velocity? Maybe that's the problem. It is. There must not be much velocity on those, probably. Yeah, there's probably not a lot of velocity on. I might have to do something like add to inherited velocity, give it a like something like that. Yeah. And then that should give it something. Yeah, there we go. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Kind of more fun. Throwing them around. Anyways, sorry. LaPampadura asked a question. Are there major differences between .io and .dop import fields other than the possibility to import more than one field and the possibility to initialize? Actually, to be honest, I get those confused all the time. .dop import fields. .io with a 2 question there. Oh, that's weird. Guess .io doesn't exist anymore. What? .dop import? .dop import's the one. Yes, sorry. No. It's okay. It used to be a thing, but they've linked these together in a different way, so it's now a file cache with a .dop import field. So that's interesting. Yeah, like I said, I always forget these. Like, what the heck is .dop import records? I don't know. I've literally never used that. No idea. I don't know what that even does. Anyways, so .dop import is only going to that's only going to be able to import specific objects, right? So like .dop import is only going to be able to grab like our particles, right? Like it's really all it's going to do is import geometry. Now it could also create points to represent our objects. So like probably from like a RBD, you could do that, right? Like you could create points from it. Exactly here. Yeah, that's what we're seeing. Transform high res geometry. So this would be exactly that, where it would take RBD and transform it. DOP import field is going to be able to import fields specifically, but also geometry. So like if we did flip fluid, right? We're getting geometry, surface, and velocity. And those are going to be, particles and then two volumes, right? Two VDBs or volumes or whatever. So those would be volumes, right? Because they're coming out of a simulation. But that's the difference between the two. And so hopefully that makes sense. They have a very similar, like they're both for bringing things from DOPS. It's just one is really more focused on bringing in geometry, and that's all it does. So like particles and things like that. Whereas, yeah, it definitely is. Import field, it's in the name, right? The fields, but it can also bring in geometry. So it can also bring in particles and things like that. So, so yes, this is more of a all-purpose thing, right? You could do it just particles, right? So like here, I could point this to the pop net here. I could point the DOP node to, where are we here? Sorry. Could point that to the pop net, pop object. There we go. And this should bring in the points, I think. There we go. So we got the points coming in from that network, right? So it is made to import a field, but the field can also be, it can also be geometry, it can be particles. So yeah, there's no reason to say that it has to be smoke, but it allows for you to has presets for everything basically that you would do in a DOP network, more or less. Maybe some things you wouldn't, but anyways. Yeah, so that's kind of the difference between the two. But cool. No, actually, I think they just in 20 changed the way that the DOP.io works as well. So I think that's actually going to reduce some confusion. It's just there for antiquity's sake. So if people are used to typing that in, it will not freak them out. Cool. Anyways, let me see what else there was here. Some other ones. Carlos asks, can you put together a simple example for muscle and tissue nodes? Could I put together a simple example? I'm going to say this, that I don't think that muscle and tissue is a very simple topic. If you're interested in that, I would take a look at the, I think there's content library stuff on that. By the way, there's some new stuff on there to take a look at. This is pretty interesting if you're interested in rigging. Where is that? There were these obviously older HIP files from like muscles and things like that that you might want to take a look at. However, I think there will be some more talk about that coming soon, I think. And I don't feel like I understand that well enough to like give you good advice on that. So I'm going to say to take a look at those files and oh, that's interesting. Rebelway released a muscle course. That's cool. Well, there you go. Maybe check that out. Is it free? Oh, that's sick. I did not realize that. Let me see. Rebelway YouTube. Rebelway. Oh, this one right here. You are right. It literally was just yesterday. And this is for Maya and Ziva users because we all know that Ziva got purchased. So maybe take a look at this. This might be
Unreal's newest update.
okay.
Unreal Engine.
Calm down. Sorry about that. Oh my goodness gracious. Hopefully that wasn't as loud for you. Sorry about that. So take a look at that. Seems like an interesting one. Cool. All right. So maybe that'd be a better thing for you to take a look at, where someone is actually, more well versed, to be able to actually talk about those things. Cool. So what was that last question here? So cool. So Pixel Anatomist, 3 questions. What's the best way to learn Houdini for a new user? Do Houdini artists usually get higher salaries typically? Are most Houdini artists considered tech artists? Those are all interesting questions. I think that the best way to learn Houdini for a new user is checking out a lot of the great content that is on Side Effects. There's a lot of good stuff here. So if you go to Learn and Learning Paths, there's a Getting Started section. Houdini Foundations are great. Carlos, are you saying they don't use any muscle nodes in the Rebel Way tutorial? That's interesting. I don't understand what they're doing then. Yeah. So the foundation stuff is great, really good. That'll take you through a whole bunch of different interesting exercises and things like that. There's also an entire book that you can download, basically, which is great. There's all of these really great places where you can learn Houdini is Hip from Moeen. Tyler Bay is Houdini for the New Artist. Lots of great stuff in here. Take a look at those. Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Bummer. I thought I had my book. I actually I had a copy of it. My seat's not rolling. Sorry. I actually have a copy of it somewhere, and I can't remember where I put it though. I have like actual, like you said, the physical printed one or whatever. They do everything with Vellum, configure tetrahedral and attach nodes. Oh, interesting. What? I don't even know what the muscle things are. Character effects, muscles. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know why they wouldn't have done it that way. That seems a little strange. But anyways, I'll have to think about that. If there's another, muscles have been this kind of weird thing that got rewritten a couple times from Side Effects. And so they've definitely kind of had this start and stop method or whatever. But yeah, I think there's going to be some full like masterclass style stuff coming out on those in not too distant future. So hopefully that'll be fairly soon. But yeah, take a look at that for the muscles. So those places, back to Pixel Anatomist's question. Yes, that's where I would recommend taking a look to start for the new user would be those locations. Do Houdini artists get higher salaries? I can't answer that. I worked at a really small studio where it didn't really matter what software I knew. It wasn't going to get me a higher salary in a small town. So maybe you'd have to ask other people that question. I don't know. And then are most Houdini artists considered tech artists? I think like terms like tech artist and things like that are tricky because like that to me has a connotation of like game design. A lot of game design people call themselves tech artists. I think a lot of Houdini users and studios are like TDs, might be effects artists. There's lots of different terms out there. There's not really like industry, like I wouldn't say that there's a lot of industry standard terms. That might be more of like you need to take a poll and see what people call themselves and see if there's any overlap. There's yeah, I think there's a lot of different terms for what a Houdini artist would be. So yeah, hopefully that answers your questions. What else was there? What would Crossfader asked? Passionate generalist. Yeah, I would say I was a little bit more of a generalist. Yeah, definitely. So sorry, Pixel Anatomist, you're saying the tech artist is an art tool developer. Yeah, like a tool developer, I think is a lot of times considered a TD. Like that's what that would be considered in a lot of studios. But certainly, yeah, there's a lot of that exists out there, both in film and games and stuff like that. So the TDs would hand off tools to artists and things like that. You might be a rigging TD and make tools for artists. You might be a effects TD, that type of thing. So again, I haven't personally worked in a big studio, so I don't always know all of kind of the hierarchy of studios and things like that. I often ask the folks that I've met from Side Effects those questions and say, hey, what are these actually? What are these things? Crossfader asked, what would cause your autosave to hang Houdini? If your file's getting too big, I guess that could cause it to hang Houdini. And really that would only be the case though if you're like freezing nodes, like a lot of nodes, or if you're you've got like stashes in your files and things like that. So yeah, that would be my thought, but I don't know. That's a good question, actually. I haven't had that happen before. Yeah, Epoxia says in each studio it's called something different. Yeah, it really is. It's kind of insane. File's only 9 megabytes. Well, that's not the answer then. I don't know, man. That's a tough one. You'd have yeah, for a tech support thing like that, I'm not sure. I could maybe help you on the Discord, but there's always support. You can if you haven't used Houdini support, shame on you, because they're amazing. Not to say shame on you, Crossfader. I'm not saying that, but if you haven't used it and ever, they're great. They're really nice. Jenny runs the support team over at Side Effects, and I cannot say enough nice things about them. They're very quick to respond to people, and they will try their hardest to get you a result back. Sometimes they can't. Sometimes it's hard to tech support something that's huge, but they're not. It's not like other support where you don't hear back for like a month. So it's always worth throwing a message their way. I think we have folks that are. I think there's always someone on staff. I mean, within reason, there's always somebody staffed tech support 24/7. I don't want to say that quite, but pretty darn close, I would think. I know that people work weekends and people they've divvied up the week amongst themselves. So if you're ever interested in getting in touch with support, there's probably someone there. But yeah, that's a tricky one, man. Yeah, maybe we'll chat on the Discord about that, and we can maybe see if we can come up with something. So question from Macrane CG: is Apex here to replace KineFX? No, it is not. Apex is very different from KineFX in pretty much always. So the two different things at play. So KineFX is the rigging. It's the the actual skeletal type situation that's happening within Houdini, right? That's kind of the character animation retargeting type world. Never mind. I hope oh, maybe that was never mind to the question before. How would you get a MOPS fall off into an RBD DOP? Seems reading the data within the sim. Never mind. That must be never mind to that. So KineFX is the tools, is really the character rigging tool set, right? The the Apex side of things is the execution graph technology. And I think because rigging is the first thing that we selected to use Apex with, it has unfortunately become Apex is rigging, whereas Apex is not rigging. Apex is a way to have delayed execution of your Houdini graph, basically, until you absolutely need it. So you build up all your, you build up your entire kind of logic to how you're going to modify this character, right? And then you build that into this graph, and then you execute it at the very last second, and that saves a ton of performance and makes things way more efficient, as opposed to having to cook every single node all the time as you're animating and doing all that kind of stuff. It basically is like, it's taking a lot of different technologies and packing them all into one thing. Like when you look at, it's like taking compiled blocks, invoke graphs, SOPs as verbs, which sounds like a crazy, like I just said, craziness, but it's pretty interesting. It's taking the idea of all the, rigging logic and stuff like that. And then also kind of this idea of taking animation and taking your animation and not having it like as a, like looking at it across all of your timeline, kind of like when you do a motion clip in KineFX and you get these like, it looks like you've like all of a sudden just like expanded time into like one static geometry, basically. Like I know that's weird. I don't really know how to describe what it's doing, but like you take all of your slices of time and put them into your scene as geometry. It's like taking all of those technologies and putting them into one, which is like really crazy. And so Apex is really more so a way of doing something. It's more akin to VOPs, VEX, that type of a thing. And so there will be more uses of Apex. You will know soon what more of those are. But I can't obviously talk about those yet, but it is not one-to-one with rigging. And so, and we've mentioned that, right? Like we talked about that in the last release, right? In the release video, like we put up all-purpose execution graph and crossed out all-purpose because it's not all-purpose yet. It has one purpose right now. So yeah, even we've stated that this is just the first glimpse you're going to see, and more will be coming. So that is one thing I personally really want to dig into is Apex. I think it's getting, I'll say this, it feels like it's getting closer to being a kind of fully thought through thing, right? Like kind of like Solaris when it first started out was a little bit rough around the edges, and 18 it came out, then 18.5 was a little better, 19 felt a little more stable, and now in 20 we're looking at it and people are really embracing it, and we're starting to see more and more movement in that direction. I would say probably 19.5 is where it got really pretty powerful and pretty stable. My guess is a similar thing will happen with some of this Apex stuff and that types of things. Um, so yeah, I think I think there'll be a lot of interesting um, places where Apex is used, and I'm feeling like that's one thing that I want to just personally explore quite a bit more, because the idea of Apex is that as many of the, actually I just want to do this. I literally don't type Apex in here almost ever, so let's see. Can I do this? What does this do? Nope. See, I don't even know how to do this. That's so embarrassing. I don't even know how to go in here and do anything. Is it this? Yep. I don't even know what I'm doing here at all. Like, there's definitely a way to do this, but yeah. Anyways. Oh yeah, I'm not sharing the screen again. Anyways, doesn't matter. I wasn't doing anything good anyways, just looking at Apex stuff that I don't know anything about. Sorry. It's too much back and forth for me. I gotta try to keep track of it. My apologies. But anyways, you didn't miss anything, don't worry. I just typed the word Apex and then had no idea what I was doing. So yeah, that's my answer to that. And hopefully that's something. Kevin asked, how do you get Houdini to make you rich? Good luck. If you're doing, I would say if you're doing anything in the animation world, computer graphics world, to try to be rich, first of all, you're going to not be happy very quickly, because it's a lot of work for not a lot of money, but I love it. So that's, I think, why a lot of us are here. But anyways, who's the smartest guy in Side Effects? Everybody is smart. There's actually, honestly, like, it's the smartest group of people I've ever been around in my life. I mean, when people are getting Oscars for their work, their technical Oscars for things that they're doing, that's pretty crazy. We are not rich. But yeah, lots of really smart folks there. If you're talking about the tech side of things, obviously, Jeff Late is super, super smart. Omar Zafiri is really smart. Cameron, I mean, I literally could just list off the entire development team. I mean, we've got like literally like PhD like candidates that come in as co-ops, as like interns, basically. It's like the interns at Side Effects are smarter than most of the people that work at other companies. It's absolutely silly, but it's a lot of fun because you get to learn a lot of really cool things. So lots of smart guys. And girls. There's lots of smart women there as well. So I shouldn't just say guys. There's a lot of very intelligent women there as well. What about AI and Houdini? Side Effects is not thinking about generative AI. There's a lot of ethical and moral dilemmas there to be figured out before I think any software company in their right mind would get into it. Now, if that's your whole business, you kind of have no other option, but we do have other options. And so we are not hearing our companies begging us for AI stuff. And I think we've heard sometimes the opposite, where if anybody uses AI in their, like, they're fired basically if they use AI in a production, because you can't have like final pixels come through that and have the legal ramifications floating around in a multi-million-dollar production. So that's a lot of the people that that's a lot of the stuff that we think about. But yeah, I wouldn't expect any generative AI stuff in Houdini. We are looking very seriously at machine learning. We've talked about that time and time again. If you saw the 20 release, there is a lot of talk about like machine learning type stuff. And those are the things that have been a real thing for a while now. Anyways, it's just that it's becoming more and more common to see it. So we have multiple people that are looking at, basically all teams have someone on their team that's designated to look into machine learning, see how it could work and see what it could do. So, I mean, there's lots of thoughts on it. It's not something that we're not taking seriously, but the generative AI stuff, for me personally, I find it super uninteresting. Just it's like it's a fun party trick, it feels like, but for beyond that, I just don't find it very fun to do personally. I mean, I'd rather bash my head against the screen trying to figure out, like, I would rather just stumble around with Apex and not know what I'm doing than and that is the stuff that, that I enjoy learning. So anyways, yeah, I could go on rants for that for a long time. So, Pampadura was asking, I'm creating documentation about sim workflows, explaining each step with notes near the node. Any ideas about online documentation of this kind? Yeah, I've done that a bit with, I've done a bit of that type of thing when our internal, I'm on the education team at Side Effects, and when we do our internal courses and things like that for professors and instructors and things like that, we try to be really specific with how we notate our scenes. If you'd like an example of that, I'm pretty sure. Let me think about this. So I think I could find this. I was really excited about this. This is kind of a silly thing, but I was, yeah. So if we go here and go to this and this, there's a bunch of node videos here, and I'm pretty sure, yep, I think these are mine. Sorry, I'm just going to pause this. But in these, if you look here, so I did these for work, so it was really fun, and these obviously don't have a ton of views, but that's okay. My videos were linked in the Houdini documentation, which feels very exciting. This is kind of how I go about and do my documentation, like how I notate my scenes when I'm doing them. So I think this one would be pretty, yeah, it's not too crazy complicated, but this is usually how I notate my scenes, right? Like if there's an important section, I'll put a little box around it, put colored stickies next to them to kind of match them up. I know this isn't a super interesting topic, but that's kind of how I do it. So if you want to take a look at those, you can actually download the source files for all of those, I believe. Maybe. Wait, actually, can you? I think you can. Actually, you might not. Wait a second. Hold on. Tutorials. Is there node references? All levels. There's a thing in here for node references. There we go. And nope, they're not in there. Well, you can take a look at them and at least see them that way. So that's how I usually do it. So just a little, my 2 cents. I really thought it would be in here. Actually, all levels. Let me just see if there's a thing in here about feathers, because it might be, there we go. There, I thought they got put in here. Nope, my files aren't in there. Maybe if you, oh, that's fun. I never get the responses to these, so I'm always like, oh, that's cool. People liked them. That's cool. Yeah, the example file should be in there. Okay, I'll have to think about that. But there, anyways, yeah, add in the colors. It's very helpful. If you do C, you get your little color palette here, and I believe you can change these by right-clicking on them. Yeah, you can add colors, remove colors, do all stuff like that. So you can do your own little custom scheme there. Crossfader. How do you make curl noise only curl in a positive Y direction? I don't. I don't think you do that with curl, because I think curl by its nature wants to go in a whole bunch of different directions. So I think you would maybe want to use a different noise type, because curl. Oh, there you go. That's a good point. There you go. See, smarter folks than I. Multiply by dot product against 0, 1, 0. There you go. Need to brush up on my math, apparently. There you go. Yeah, just some comments about generative AI. That's cool. I need to learn maths. Yeah, it's always something that, when you learn the tricks, you got to try to get them stuck in there, right? I like math. I enjoy it. Just don't always know all the tricks. I bought a course. Yeah, there's some good courses out there. There's I think there's some from Houdini School that I think are pretty good. I haven't taken them, clearly. That's why I didn't answer that question properly. Yeah, so but I think there's quite a few good ones out there. Yeah. I actually, when I first started learning Houdini, yeah, go to bed, man. It's so late. Good. Nice to have you in the chat. If you're ever if you're banging your head against USD, feel free to reach out anytime. Oh, cool. Udemy game dev. Yeah, nice. That's cool. I don't remember I don't know if I wasn't good at finding this stuff, but I just did some Khan Academy like linear algebra courses, because I was like, I need to learn linear algebra a little bit better. So that's what I did before I ever started learning Houdini. Well, at the same time as learning Houdini. But yeah, that was it's interesting, like the things that you start to like Houdini exposes that you're like, shoot, I should have learned that, should have taken more notes in that class or whatever, but yeah, so so you would multiply. Oh, well, let's see if I can do that. Let's just do this. Share screen. No, I'm not going to share my screen. I'm doing it just for me. Sorry. Man, I'm really struggling with that tonight. I haven't done this enough recently. Usually I just turn it on and leave it for 2 hours. So it's definitely a struggle tonight. All right, let's see. Let's do 100. Let's do VOP, point VOP. What? If I could type. Holy cow. Struggle's real. Let's see here. Let's just do, that's fun. Let's do curl. Picture's worth 1,000 maths. Yes. Curl noise. We'll do position here. And why don't we just do it to end, since that'll be an easy enough thing to visualize. Just turn that off and we'll just visualize the normals. So I believe what we would want to do is we'd want to do a dot product of this and 0, 1, 0. And if we look at that, And then I think if we multiply here, because it's going to we're going to use that as like a scale. There we go. Looks like that works. Let's see here. What if we just do the offset? We'll just do the offset by time. Just hit play. And you might want to, let's see here. What is the thing you might want to do is take this, do some fitting with it. Let's see. Because what values are we here? Yeah, we've got 2 and 1. So you might want to you might want to just clamp that. Maybe. I think that makes sense. And then, yeah, you could just clamp this to certain values, right? Like you could kind of play around with this and get it clamped the way you want it to. But that's probably a, I mean, you could use a fit too as well, but oh yeah, normalize it. Sure. Yeah, good night. Go to bed. Nice to have you, Simon. Yeah, you could do that. That works as well. Let's see, normalize. What did he say? Normalize, but noise and scale. Normalize the input noise and scale by the length. Anyways, do what Simon said, and it looks like sort of like this. Ay. Normalize the. Yeah, brain shut down initially. Same here. My brain's starting to shut down a bit as well. But that's a cool little thing, and obviously you could change this, right? So you could do 0.5, 0.5, and then you're going to get noises that are more in that direction, right? So you can kind of tweak the direction that these are going to be in, right? Nice, looks beautiful. I'm going to try this. Let me just see what this does. What does normalizing this do? Yeah, it's kind of cool too. Looks like grass. Sure does. It's something. There you go. Anyways. There we go. Little weirdness. Little curl and dot product there. Cool. Nice. What do we have here? What's stuck in the viewer? All right. Well, we're definitely getting close to the end here. If anybody has any other questions, happy to try my best to answer it. And if not, maybe Simon won't be in bed yet and he'll answer it. Just kidding. But yeah, I think we're starting to get to the end here. So if you have any other questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. But otherwise, we're starting to wind down a little here. Can I make something explode before we go? Yeah, it's easy. You just go like this. Geo. And you go fireball. Pyro configure fireball. Boom. There we go. And then we hit play. You get an explosion. There's lots of really nice pyro configure. Yeah, I usually do about 2 hours for a live session. I mean, 2 hours is a lot to talk. It's a lot. I have done longer things. I've done a head explosion like scanner. I've only seen, I'm guessing you're talking about a scanner darkly. I've only seen that once, maybe. It's definitely not something I've watched very often. But if you do pyro configure, all of these are really cool. So these are lots of really neat things. Like this one's the aerial explosion. So let me drop this one down. And these are cool ways to like learn how to do this stuff, right? Scanners. Oh, I don't know that one then at all. Never even heard of that. So here's an aerial explosion. So this one's kind of neat. You got little trails in it. Lots of fun little examples here that have been put together by, developers just to kind of show how we expect these things to work. And then from there, you can always wire them up crazy different ways and do all sorts of nonsense. So this is kind of the idea of how these work. So, yeah, so those are some simple explosions right there. There you go. How about that? Oh my gosh. I'm so stupid. I'm so sorry. Hi. This is my first time doing this. Jeez, I swear. So yeah, here it is. Just delete them. Okay. That's how you crash Houdini. Oh boy. I actually think I need to delete something out of my preferences. I think there's something in my preferences that have been acting funny. I think it might be an HDA library that I've loaded that's causing some issues, but it's okay. And I don't know how to say your name. And Enya, we'll just say, just got here, bit new, wondering how long each session goes for. Yeah, 2 hours usually is how long I go for. Depends. If I'm in the middle of something like really, really deep, I'll let it go for a little bit longer. But yeah, I think EPC sessions, I thought they were online. I thought I remember somebody saying they were online and marketing. But I think so. Yeah, I think they will be. They should be. Question mark. Okay. Delete, please. Deleted. Okay. Anyways, I'm just gonna save this. I also will. These files are available in the Discord server. There's a HH files or something like that chat with a link to a Google Drive that I upload these to. So if you do a pyro configure, you get all these nice node options here. And so yeah, you can do fireball, just drop it down, makes the whole thing. And then if we go up here, we got our fireball. We'll just hit play and we'll make a fireball. Like so. So yeah, these are great like ways to get started with doing explosions. So that's the fireball, and then the other one I was talking about was the aerial explosion. This one's a little bit different. It has trails and things like that. It seems like I already said this. If I'd been showing my screen. All right, so this one is, yeah, it's a little different. It's got some like trails and things like that. So this is cool. You can kind of go through and look at how these are built and kind of how the developers would expect this to be built. So here you can see this is the Pyro burst source. This is the Pyro trail path. Then you get your Pyro trail source from there. So a lot of particle stuff. The burst source is your particles as well. Then we merge those in for the simulation. There's the kind of volumetrics coming in. And then we merge the fire trails in at the end. And yeah, we get our nice looking aerial explosion from there. Do a pyro. So yeah, you look at these, play around, see how they work, kind of mess around with them, and yeah, you get some pretty cool results. And yeah, they're good ways to see how you might set up something custom on your own. So yeah, there you go, some explosions. And yeah, so my start time for these streams are 6 p.m. So if you're ever 6 p.m. Eastern time, it's kind of as early as I can reliably get started after work. So yeah, then I usually go for a couple hours. I used to start them at 8, which is like I realized was crazy late in Europe, and so that was no fun. So at least it's like just really late in Europe instead of insanely late. So anyways, so yeah, that is where we are. I'm gonna now actually put myself full screen because I think I'm going to be done, and hopefully I'll remember if I need to go back. But that is, I think, where we'll end this for today, and I will go online, or I will load this file up online if you just want to poke around with the few things that I threw in there. One really fun note that personally for me is I'm going to be getting fiber optic internet very soon. They're installing it in my neighborhood, so I'm very excited about that. And so hopefully I can actually up the quality of my videos a little bit again, and we'll get a little bit better quality here. So yeah, so I'm really looking forward to that. And so maybe you'll see a little bit sharper, higher quality video from me in the not too distant future, getting 500. Oh gosh, are you kidding me? Fiber 10 gig up and down. I'm getting 500 megabit up and down, and I'm very excited because I had 12 megabit up. So 500 megabit up is like, I can't wait. I'm going to lose my mind. 10 gigs. You have 10 gigabit Ethernet in your house? How are you using that? How is that even useful? I don't even understand that. That's wild, man. You have 10 gigabit Ethernet. Oh my God, man. You're out of your, you're crazy. You're crazy, man. That would be really fun. I would love that. But I think the highest that this fiber company does, they're a really tiny company, but I think the highest they do is 8. And they actually have like a managed router and stuff like that. You can get upgraded, all the things. Yeah, that would be fun. I remember when we got 10 gig Ethernet for our server at my studio, I was like, how is your your 10 gig internet is $50 a month? Oh man, I need details on that. I mean, I can't get it, but that's incredible. I don't know how that works. I'm going to be paying that much for 500 megabits up and down, and I was like, felt like I was robbing the company. Anyways, Sonic. Well, that's why, because you're in the Bay Area. They actually have real technology there. Well, there you go. Go live in the Bay Area. The housing is really expensive, but you can get a million megabit per second internet. Anyways, all right. Well, we'll end it there on a little tech chat. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Super fun. Exactly. Yeah, that's true. I could probably rent my whole block for your rent. Yeah. Anyways, thank you all for joining. It's really fun to get to chat with you all. And yeah, I won't be traveling for a while, so there shouldn't be any disruptions or anything like that. The only disruptions will be my work presentations, which get in the way from time to time on Wednesdays, but that's okay. We can always move to a Thursday or something. But yeah, thank you all for joining. Please reach out at the Discord server. Always trying to check there as much as I can. Sometimes on the weekend I am a little quieter, just doing other things. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining, and we will catch you next time. Until then, have a good one. Bye.